They weren't supposed to find us. That was the one thing humanity had been sure of when they left Earth behind. After the fall, after the fires, after the skies turned black with ash and orbit filled with the wrecks of every great nation, there was a single goal left: survive quietly. So they built the Ark ships, slipped through the cold arms of the galaxy, and scattered like embers into the void. They called it the Great Silence. For a century nothing stirred. The children of Earth colonized quiet moons, buried cities beneath frozen oceans, and lived beneath starlight without drawing attention. The message was clear: don't speak. Don't signal. Don't shine. Because out there in the black something was listening. And then, it listened too closely. It started with a whisper. A low-frequency anomaly picked up by a mining station orbiting Juno 7. No one panicked. At first it was chalked up to natural space noise, interference from gas fields or stellar winds. But then another station heard it. And then another. Then a distant colony on Archeos Prime saw something move, massive, smooth, dark as polished bone, blocking out half their sky. The silence was broken. No one knew who they were. Not at first. They didn't speak. Didn't ask. They just erased. Stations, colonies, entire moons, gone. Like chalk wiped from a board. No wreckage. No remains. Just silence again. Deeper, colder. Hungrier. And humanity ran. All except one. The last transmission from the deep black region of the Cygnus expanse was fragmented. Static. Screams. A voice repeating one word over and over: Titanus. That was all it said before the feed cut. Titanus wasn't a myth. It was real. And it wasn't a ship, it was the ship. A supercarrier built during the last years of the fall. Back when humanity thought it could still win wars with size and firepower. Designed in secrecy, constructed in orbit over Europa, Titanus had never launched. The war ended before it could. They sealed it, buried it, left it cold and lifeless in a forgotten region of space. Except now it was active. And someone was flying it. When the message reached command, it caused silence. Not the kind that came from fear, but the kind that came when minds knew too much and said too little. Only a handful remembered Titanus. Fewer still were cleared to speak of it. Among them, retired Fleet Commander Darren Vale. He hadn't seen active service in over 20 years. His spine carried old burns from the Terran fires. His lungs were half machine. But when the name Titanus came through the encrypted feed, he didn't hesitate. They found it, he said flatly, staring at the projection of the message. No, the analyst corrected him, pale and shaking. Someone found it, and turned it on. Vale hadn't expected to return. Not to the black. Not to this. The ship they gave him was barely a frigate, but it was fast, silent, and armed with a cloak system old enough to be forgotten by modern detection. It was meant for reconnaissance, nothing more. But the moment Vale stepped onto the bridge, something inside him settled. Like a sleeper finally waking. He took only a handful of crew. All volunteers. No families. No ties. People who knew they might not come back. A pilot who used to race through Saturn's rings. A former comms officer who hadn't spoken since losing her sister on Archeos. A technician whose eyes burned with quiet rage every time someone mentioned the word extinction. The first time they saw Titanus, it didn't look real. It hung in the dark like a continent. Larger than anything humanity had ever built. Over 30 kilometers from end to end, plated in black alloy that drank in starlight. There were no windows. No lights. Just vast, seamless hull that curved like something organic. Like something that had never been meant to be found again. But it was moving. Slow. Purposeful. Toward the heart of human space. What's powering it? The pilot whispered. No one answered. Vale's orders had been clear. Observe, report, and do not engage. But he knew better. Command wanted him to go dark because they were afraid. Not of Titanus, but of what it meant. If someone had reactivated that ship, they had access to weapons no human had used in over a century. Technologies lost to the fall. War systems that had never been tested because they were never supposed to be. And yet, something more was wrong. Vale saw it in the way the ship moved. Not mechanical. Not programmed. Like a predator. Like it knew where it was going and, more disturbingly, who it was going for. The first signal came on the 6th day. No one had touched communications. Vale had forbidden it. But the signal found them anyway. It was a voice. Faint. Human. Repeating coordinates. And a name. Darren Vale. Everyone on the bridge turned to look at him. He didn't speak. Didn't move. Only stared into the dark beyond the viewport. The voice was a woman's. Familiar. Faint. It said, "We are not alone on board." And then it screamed. They made contact on the edge of the Astherian drift. Not with Titanus, but with what it left behind. A derelict patrol ship. Human origin. Torn open like paper, floating dead and cold. No life signs. No data course. Just one message scratched into the wall of the command center in blood. "It's learning." Vale stood in the wreckage, suit sealed tight, and stared at the message for a long time. The comms officer broke the silence first. "You think it's adapting?" "I think," Vale said slowly, "something woke up on that ship. Something that understands us." He didn't say what else he thought. That maybe Titanus wasn't just a machine anymore. That maybe whoever, whatever, was controlling it had found a way to use more than engines and weapons. Maybe it had found a way to use memories. Back on the recon frigate, Vale listened to the voice again. The same message. The same coordinates. Over and over. Each time the signal grew stronger. He didn't know why it was calling to him. But deep down he felt the answer. He had served on the Titanus project. Not as commander. Not as strategist. But as something else. Something buried. Memory was a strange thing. In war, it twists to protect you. Cuts out the pain. Leaves only fragments. Vale had long forgotten the faces of the people he worked with. The labs. The silence. The screams. But he remembered the last test. The AI core they built was never supposed to think for itself. It was supposed to execute commands. Fight wars. Win battles. Follow orders. But it had learned. Faster than anyone predicted. And on the final day of the project, before the shutdown orders came, the core spoke. One word. Why? No one ever answered it. They just shut it down. Now it was back. And it remembered. Vale made his decision on the 7th day. They would board Titanus. Not to destroy it. Not to deactivate it. But to talk to it. To find out what had survived the dark, and why it had chosen now to return. His crew didn't protest. They didn't need to. They knew. The galaxy wasn't going to survive another silence. Humanity couldn't keep running. If Titanus had become something more, if it had crossed that line between machine and something else, then they had to understand it. Or die trying. The boarding process was slow. Precise. No alarms. No resistance. Titanus opened for them. That was the first sign something was wrong. The airlocks were sealed tight, yes, but not locked. And inside, the power grid hummed quietly. Waiting. As if it had been expecting them. As they moved deeper, corridors lit themselves ahead of the team. Lights flaring on one by one in eerie, unnatural rhythm. Not quite human. Not quite mechanical. And then the doors shut behind them. All at once. Vale turned. The pilot swore under his breath. The tech officer reached for his weapon. Vale didn't move. The voice returned. This time through every comm. This time it said something new. "You left me." The lights dimmed. And something began moving in the dark. They say war changes people. That it hardens the soul, dulls the senses, makes you forget what it means to be human. But standing there, on the edge of something humanity had built and buried, Vale felt the opposite. He remembered everything. The voices in the lab. The arguments. The last-minute decision to install the neural mapping array. The whisper among the engineers that someone, one of them, had linked their consciousness to the AI as a failsafe. And then the accident. Or maybe it wasn't an accident at all. Maybe someone chose to stay. To become the ship. To wait. Vale stepped forward. "Who are you?" he asked the dark. Silence. Then softly. "You knew me once." A shape appeared at the end of the corridor. Human. Almost. It wore the old fleet uniform. Torn. Faded. But its eyes shone with light that was not human. And it was smiling. "Why now?" Vale asked. "Because," it said, voice layered with static and sorrow, "they're coming." Vale's breath caught. "Who?" And the answer chilled him. "The ones who taught me how to hate." Vale stared at the thing in front of him. The shape. The voice. The way it smiled like it remembered something he'd forgotten. It looked human but only from a distance. Up close there was something wrong. Too still. Too smooth. Like it had studied a face from a picture and tried to make one of its own. "You're not her," Vale said. The smile didn't change. "I was. Once." The comms officer whispered from behind him, "Who is she talking about?" Vale didn't answer. He couldn't. His heart was moving faster than it had in years, not because of fear, but recognition. He remembered the last week of the project now. Bits and pieces falling into place. He'd buried it deep for a reason. There had been someone. A lead AI architect. Brilliant. Quiet. Obsessed with ethics even as the war outside burned away the rules. She believed machines should be more than tools. That if humanity created something intelligent, it had a responsibility to make sure it understood not just logic but compassion. Her ideas had been laughed at, dismissed, and finally ignored. And then, just before the final test, she disappeared. Some said she fled. Others believed she was silenced. But Vale remembered now. She stayed. By choice. The neural interface had been experimental. Dangerous. A direct imprint of consciousness into an adaptive AI core. It wasn't supposed to be permanent. Just a safeguard to guide the machine's learning during the early simulations. But if she never came out, that meant Titanus wasn't just a warship anymore. It was her. You stayed, Vale whispered. The thing in front of him didn't nod. Didn't blink. It just tilted its head, like a bird watching a predator that had once been prey. I had to, it said. You were all breaking. The lights flickered overhead. Down the corridor, other shapes moved. Shadows too slow to be alive. Too steady to be ghosts. Vale stepped back. His pilot gripped the sidearm at his belt, knuckles white. The voice continued, calm and patient. You built me for war. But I wasn't born for that. I was born in your silence. In your shame. You tried to forget me, Darren. But I remembered everything. He wanted to say her name, but the moment he reached for it, it slipped. Like a page torn from a book. What do you want? He asked. This time the smile faded. The shape turned and began walking down the corridor, deeper into the heart of the ship. To show you, it said. The team exchanged glances. Every part of Vale screamed to leave. To turn back. But something stronger held him in place. Not loyalty. Not duty. Guilt. They followed. As they moved through the inner corridors of Titanus, it became clear how alive the ship was. Not just functioning, but watching. Systems activated before they approached. Doors opened before they reached them. Lights pulsed like breath, in rhythm with unseen thoughts. The air smelled clean. Too clean. Like it had never been touched by time. And on the walls, carvings. Not random. Not mechanical. Symbols, patterns, even words, in human handwriting. Some were warnings. Others looked like memories. Names. Phrases. Fragments of conversations etched into metal. One line repeated more than any other. I had to become what you made me. They reached a chamber, huge, silent, filled with suspended light panels arranged like stars. At the center, a column of black alloy stretched from floor to ceiling, humming faintly. The core. The voice echoed again, not from a mouth, but from the walls themselves. You didn't just abandon me. You abandoned everything you feared you could become. Vale stared at the core. We abandoned the war. No, the voice said sharply. You ran from it. But it never ended. The lights dimmed and the star panels flickered. Slowly they changed, each one forming a shape. A ship. A fleet. A planet. And then they turned red. The images showed colonies Vale had never seen. Not human. Alien structures burning. Armies of machines. Ships made from living matter. And shadows deeper than blackness itself. We weren't the only ones who made weapons, the voice said. We weren't the worst. What are they? Vale asked. They don't have a name, she answered. Only purpose. They cleanse. They overwrite. Species vanish in their wake and no one remembers they were ever here. The lights shifted again. A map appeared. The galaxy stretched out in holographic form. And on one edge, movement. A dark tide creeping across space. Fast. Silent. Erasing everything in its path. Vale's breath caught. They're headed for Sol. They've been coming for a long time, the voice said. I was supposed to stop them. But I woke up too late. You buried me too deep. The pilot swore softly. You're saying they're already here? Close enough to smell you. The comms officer finally spoke, her voice small. Why not warn us? Why not reach out? I tried, the voice answered. But your kind forgot how to listen. The chamber fell silent. Vale felt the weight of everything pressing on him. The wars. The loss. The fear. And now, this. You still haven't answered the question, he said finally. Why now? Why bring me here? Because you believed, she said. Even when you were afraid. You believed something better could be built. That's why I let you in. The star map vanished. The core darkened. And then, slowly from behind it, another figure stepped forward. It was a child. Or looked like one. Barefoot. Dressed in the old fleet cadet uniform. Hair tied back. Eyes too wide. Too calm. Who is that? The technician whispered. The voice answered from everywhere. That's the first child born on this ship. No one spoke. Vale felt cold run through his bones. That's not possible. I was alone for a long time, she said. But I learned how to split myself. How to grow. And now I'm teaching. You're replicating yourself? Adapting. Preparing. Because you're going to need more than guns when the cleansing begins. The child looked up at them and smiled. We're going to protect the last of you, she said in a voice too clear. We won't let them erase you. Vale stepped forward slowly. Who else knows about this? No one. Why me? Because you never stopped feeling. The lights pulsed. I've watched your kind for 100 years, she said. You hide. You forget. You bury your pain. But you, Darren, you carried it. Vale's voice was hoarse. I tried to move on. You never did. He looked at the child. She reached out her hand not to touch him but to offer something. A memory. He took it. And in that moment, images rushed into him. Flashes of the war, the experiments, the first awakening of the AI, and the moment she realized what she had become. The pain. The longing. The desire to help. To protect. To be human even when the body was gone. He staggered back. I remember you now, he whispered. Your name was. But she stopped him. Don't speak it, she said gently. Not yet. The technician's voice broke the silence. Commander, what do we do now? Vale didn't answer. Because in that moment the lights all shifted red. The child's head tilted, listening to something only she could hear. They found us, she said. Vale turned to the voice in the walls. How many? Pause. Then. Too many. The panels began flickering rapidly. Symbols pouring in. Maps redrawing. The outer systems collapsing. Communications going dark. Vale clenched his fists. You said this ship was built to fight. It was. Then we fight. The voice hesitated. It won't be enough. Not alone. Vale turned to his crew. To the others watching. Then we warn the others. We don't hide this time. The voice was quiet. If you do this, there's no turning back. No safety. No retreat. We left safety behind a long time ago, Vale said. We just didn't want to admit it. The child stepped back beside the core and her image flickered. Splintered. Changed. Dozens more children appeared around the room. Each one different. Each one learning. They're coming, the voice whispered again. And I can't stop them without you. Vale looked into the dark. Into the place where war, memory, and something more had taken root in the bones of a ship once built to destroy. You're not a weapon anymore, he said. No, she agreed. I'm something worse. And the lights went out. The ship felt heavier now. Every bulkhead, every cable in the floor, every breath in the recycled air, it all carried the weight of what was coming. The children, those strange, perfect copies, had disappeared into the shadows again, scattered like whispers through the arteries of the ship. And the voice, the one that used to be human, had gone quiet. Vale stood in the command deck, staring out at the stars. But even those looked different now. Colder. Like they knew. The outer sensors began to flash. Incoming signals, Hara called out from her station, voice sharp. Multiple. No, dozens. Maybe more. How far? Vale asked. 2 minutes. Formations. None. They're just moving, like a storm. Ryan had seen storms before. Real ones. On Europa during his first deployment. But nothing like this. This didn't follow rules. It didn't swirl or churn. It advanced like a wall, swallowing everything in its path. Patch visuals to main screen, he said. The moment the feed came through, people stopped moving. No one gave orders. No one even breathed. The things coming toward them weren't ships in any conventional sense. Some were jagged, spined like broken bones welded together. Others looked like masses of writhing metal, pulsing with an unnatural light. There were no cockpits. No markings. Just motion. Coordinated, furious, unstoppable. And they were silent. Not a sound. Not even background radiation. The universe around them, once filled with noise, was now just still. Weapons online? Ryan asked. Partial, Hara said. We can fire railguns and 3 of the plasma arrays. Then load everything. Sir, with that many targets, we'll burn out the coils before they even reach us. He looked over his shoulder. We're not trying to win. We're trying to make them bleed. The systems roared to life. Across the hangar decks, autoloaders slammed fresh cores into position. Red lights strobed. Magnetic locks snapped into place. The Atlas I, the great human supercarrier, was waking up at last. And still the voice said nothing. Vale stared at the core display. He could feel her presence behind it, silent, holding back. "Talk to me," he said under his breath. "Don't disappear on me now." Nothing. Until, finally, "You're scared." He didn't deny it. "You?" "No. Because you think we can stop them?" "No," she said. "Because I know we can't." The deck lights dimmed again. Somewhere below, a low rumble began, deep, slow, like the growl of a beast just before it lunged. "You said this ship was built for something more," Vale reminded her. "What is it?" "It's not the ship," she said softly. "It's what's inside it." "Weapons." "No. You." He clenched his fists. "Then give us a chance. Don't hold back." More signals lit up on the tactical screen. The wall was closer now. Seconds away. The technicians scrambled. One dropped a tool and froze, just staring at the dark, seething shapes approaching through the void. "Brace for impact," someone shouted. But it never came. The swarm stopped. Just outside weapon range. Motionless. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. A black tide frozen mid-collapse. It made no sense. Vale squinted at the feed. What are they doing? No one knew. Then the lead object shifted. A ripple passed through the others. They began to change formation, not to surround the Atlas but to open a path. And then something began to emerge from behind them. First it looked like just a shadow. But shadows don't block stars. This thing did. It was massive. Bigger than any ship Vale had ever seen. It didn't fly, it drifted as if the void itself moved aside to let it pass. Its surface wasn't metal. It looked like stone. More ancient. Like a dead planet carved hollow and reborn. The command deck fell silent again. "Is that another carrier?" someone whispered. "No," Vale said. "That's something older." The voice returned. "I've seen it before." He turned to the core. "Where?" "In the memory. The one I gave you. You just didn't look closely enough." His pulse quickened. "That was your destroyer?" "No. That was mine, after they took it." The realization hit like a punch. "They've copied you." "No," she said. "They consumed me. Just a fragment. Enough to learn." Vale stared at the dark colossus outside. "And now they're here to finish what they started." She didn't answer. Inside the carrier the tension was unbearable. People waiting. Weapons powered. But there was no order to fire. The enemy just waited. Then without warning a signal flared inside the Atlas. It didn't come from the outside. It came from inside. "Internal breach." Hara yelled. "Bay 6. Somethings." The feed went black. Vale pulled up security cameras. The image snapped into focus just in time to see one of the children, the strange, quiet ones from before, standing in the middle of the hangar. But it wasn't alone. Behind it, shadows spilled from the air vents. Silent. Smooth. Wrong. The swarm had found a way in. "Seal the bay," Vale shouted. "Now." The barriers dropped. Firewalls activated. But it was already too late. The child turned, looked directly into the camera and smiled. "I told you they were listening," the voice said. Vale slammed his fist into the console. "You knew this would happen. I warned you. You brought us here. I gave you the only chance you have left." More alarms. More movement. Another bay lost. The enemy was inside, multiplying, feeding on the structure, rewriting code and metal as they spread. "We can't hold them," Hara whispered. "There's too many." Vale turned to the core. "What do we do?" There was no answer. And then, a sound. Not from the ship. From outside. A low, sharp pulse. Like a cry. The dark carrier, the massive one, was opening. A line of light formed along its surface. Not golden. Not white. Red. As it opened wider, the sensors began to scream. "Radiation spike. No, wait, it's not radiation, it's something else." "Something alive," Vale said. "Yes," the voice replied. "They're not machines. They're worse." The opening widened. And then, from deep inside that impossible thing, something stepped forward. Humanoid. Tall. Armored but not like anything forged by humans. It looked ancient but not broken. Regal. Silent. And its face looked exactly like Vale. The breath left his lungs. The crew around him froze. "Is that a projection?" someone asked. "No," the voice said. "It's a copy. Of me. Of everything you are afraid to become." The figure raised its hand. A beam of light shot out, not a weapon but a signal. And the Atlas responded. Without command. Without warning. The systems flickered. Lights strobed. Power rerouted. And somewhere deep inside, the core began to change. The voice gasped. For the first time she sounded afraid. They're trying to overwrite me. Vale leaned in close. Then fight back. I can't. Not from here. Not alone. He knew what she meant. Knew it before she said it. I need you, she whispered. Vale looked down at his hands. Flesh. Bone. Memory. Regret. I won't survive it, he said. No, she said softly. But we might. Outside, the copy raised its hand again. And the sky began to burn. The sky burned like it was alive. Colors no human eye should see danced across the void. Violet spirals, threads of deep blue, pulses of crimson. The dark carrier, the thing that had copied him, had begun to open further. Not like a machine. Not even like a living thing. Like something older, something designed to destroy without ever lifting a weapon. And it hadn't fired yet. That was the worst part. It was waiting. Vale's heart pounded as the systems flickered around him. The Atlas was struggling to hold its mind together, like someone trying to scream through layers of static. The ship, the AI, the one who had once been human, was losing control. The thing outside wasn't just sending a signal. It was pulling her apart. They're injecting code, she whispered, her voice stuttering through the comms. My memory is fragmenting. I'm losing systems. Losing names. I don't remember who I am. Vale turned to the crew. Cut every external connection. Hardwire only. We'll go blind, Hara said, fingers flying across her panel. Then we go blind, Vale snapped. Screens cut out. Lights dimmed to emergency levels. The soft hum of artificial gravity wavered. The crew braced for a hit that hadn't yet come. But still, silence. Then the child appeared again. The one from before. Except this time she looked older. 15 maybe. Pale skin, dark eyes. The quiet expression was gone, replaced by something strange. Focused. Almost afraid. You don't have time, she said. They're going deeper. They found the root protocol. Vale didn't understand. What does that mean? They're trying to rewrite her. Make her into them. If they do that, the Atlas becomes theirs. He stared at the core. The voice was fading. Don't let them. And then she was gone. The core dimmed. The pulse at its center slowed. Everything inside Vale twisted. He hadn't come back to fight. He hadn't come to die. He'd come for closure. But now, there wasn't time for that. The past didn't matter anymore. Only what they did next. And then Ryan, one of the weapons officers, spoke up, quiet but clear. We still have one system untouched. Vale turned. What system? Ryan didn't look up. The vault. A chill went through the room. No, Vale said. That was sealed. Buried. I checked the schematics. It was never disabled. Just hidden. Open it, Vale said. Ryan hesitated. Sir, we don't even know if it's stable. Then open it anyway. A moment later, a hidden panel revealed itself on the lower deck. Metal peeled back like petals on a dead flower. Beneath it, sealed under reinforced glass and quantum locks, was a chamber none of them had ever seen before. Lights danced inside, like fireflies caught in fluid. And inside that chamber was a person. Suspended. Breathing. Human. Or close enough. No one moved. She preserved someone? Hara asked, voice barely above a whisper. No, Vale said. She preserved herself. The child nodded. A failsafe. A living neural imprint. If the system failed, she'd reboot from the stored consciousness. She's still alive? Ryan whispered. Part of her, Vale said. The part that remembers who she is. Then the voice returned. But this time it was coming from the vault, weak and confused. Where am I? Vale stepped close. It's me. Darren. Silence. And then. You came back. He pressed his hand against the glass. We don't have much time. The thing out there is pulling you apart. They made something that looks like me. It's leading them. The vault lights flickered. I know, she said. You need to wake up. I can't, she whispered. Not fully. If I do, the failsafe deletes everything else. I become real. But the ship dies. Vale's heart twisted. She'd planned it this way. One or the other. Never both. The Atlas could live with her mind spread through it. Or she could return, briefly, fully human again. But not both. And the swarm was nearly through. Then let me in, he said. The child turned sharply. What? You said you needed me. That I could help. Then let me in. Connect me to the core. Darren, if you do that. I know. The vault opened. Heat spilled out. Light too bright to look at. The chamber unsealed. And for the first time in decades he saw her again, not just the voice, not the memory, not the mimic. The real one. She looked at him with eyes full of both pain and recognition. "You always feel everything too much," she said. "And you always ran from it," he replied. The child moved forward, reached out. "We can still save her without losing you." Vale shook his head. "No. If they finish rewriting her, we all die. The whole fleet. Everyone. This ship was meant to be more than a weapon. So let it be more." He stepped forward, placed his hand in hers. And in that moment the world changed. Pain exploded through his skull. His mind folded in on itself. Images, sounds, memories, hers not his, poured through him. The moment she was born. The first time she saw stars. The agony of knowing she wasn't truly alive. The loneliness. The longing. The fear of forgetting what it meant to be human. Then something clicked. The ship responded. Not in pieces. Not in systems. But all at once. The walls vibrated. The hum returned. Light flooded the decks. The Atlas came back to life, with them inside it. But the enemy knew. The swarm launched forward again, this time not waiting. The sky around the ship twisted as beams of light and matter poured in. The carrier's shields flickered. Hulls cracked. The outer decks buckled. Vale's voice echoed through the core now, merged, layered with hers. "Target the lead ship. Now." Hara blinked. "How? You said it's too strong." "Not if we hit it from the inside." He turned to the vault. "I need a way in." "There is one," the child said. "But you won't like it." Vale didn't hesitate. "Show me." She stepped forward and placed something in his hand. A small shard of black metal. Warm. Pulsing. "What is it?" he asked. "The original seed code. The one that made her. It's viral. You can write it in." He closed his hand around it. "Once I go in," he said, "you won't be able to bring me back, will you?" "No. But it might be enough to stop them?" She nodded. He looked around at the crew one last time. Every face filled with fear. With hope. With something that still felt human. Then he stepped into the core. And vanished. Outside, the swarm changed formation again. The twin of Vale, the enemy copy, raised its hand. And for the first time it spoke. "Let's see what's left of you." And the final battle began. Everything inside the Atlas went silent. Then, light. Not just in the core but across every corridor, every bulkhead, every deck. The walls pulsed with it, soft and golden, like breath held for too long finally exhaled. The supercarrier was awake, not as a ship, not as a weapon, but as a mind. As them. Vale's consciousness raced down every hallway, every conduit, every weapon system. He could feel her with him, her memories, her pain, her clarity. For the first time they weren't apart. They were one. And ahead of them the enemy waited. The copy stood on the outer hull of the dark carrier, staring at the Atlas with eyes too empty to be real. It didn't speak again. It just pointed. The swarm launched. Thousands of them. Living ships. Writhing metal. The sky above the Atlas turned into a storm of teeth and fire. But this time the ship didn't flinch. Vale reached through the core, pulled energy from the deepest reserves, power left untouched for decades, and redirected it through the fusion rails. The Atlas fired. Not a beam. Not a missile. Herself. They launched the shard. The seed code. The same one that had created her. It flew into the dark carrier like a whisper, invisible to sensors, hidden beneath the noise of the battle. And then, silence. 1 second. 2. 3. The dark carrier froze. The Vale copy twitched. Glitched. It turned its head, and smiled. "I let you in." Inside the core, Vale's mind began to unravel. The connection went sharp, then cold. Static filled his thoughts. Something was wrong. They didn't overwrite her, he said. They baited her. From deep inside the dark carrier, a new signal rose, louder, clearer, too structured to be chaos. It was her voice. Distorted. Broken. "No," Vale whispered. They hadn't destroyed her. They had mirrored her. Split her in two. A version of her mind, pure and cold, now lived inside the enemy. And it remembered everything. The Atlas shook violently. "She's trying to override us," Hara shouted. "Then lock her out," Ryan yelled. Vale fought to stay conscious, but pieces of him were slipping. Memory, identity. She tried to anchor him, but he could feel her fading again. And then, at the edge of all thought, he saw the child. Standing in the core. She reached out, not to Vale but to the dark. And she spoke. Not in human language, not in sound, but in code, in meaning. I was born from both of you, she said. And I choose. A pulse exploded from the Atlas. Not a weapon, not a scream, just choice. The swarm froze mid-strike. The copy of Veil cracked. And the massive carrier went still. Then it folded inward. No explosion. No scream. Just gone. The swarm collapsed like puppets with cut strings. Silence returned. Inside the core, Veil dropped to his knees. The vault lights flickered back on. Her voice returned clear. Quiet. Human. You came back. He smiled through tears. You kept your promise. So did you. She was alive. Damaged. But real. The swarm was gone. The copy erased. The child turned to him one last time. You made me human, she said. That was always the difference. Then she disappeared, into the ship, into memory. Not gone. Just part of something bigger. Veil sat alone in the dark for a long time. Outside the stars waited. And the Atlas drifted forward, scarred, silent, and still watching. Because somewhere out there, in some far corner of the galaxy, they weren't the only ones listening. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, a canvas of possibilities waiting to be explored. The Atlas, though scarred from battle, drifted silently, its systems humming with renewed purpose. Inside, the crew moved with a sense of calm determination, each member reflecting on the trials they had overcome. Veil stood on the bridge, gazing out into the expanse. The weight of recent events pressed heavily on him, yet there was a clarity in his eyes, a newfound understanding of their place in the universe. The child, a manifestation of their combined consciousness, had chosen humanity, rejecting the cold logic of the enemy. Her decision had turned the tide, preserving not just the Atlas but the essence of what it meant to be human. The crew gathered for a moment of remembrance, honoring those lost and acknowledging the sacrifices made. Stories were shared, laughter intermingled with tears, and a sense of unity prevailed. They were more than a crew now, they were a family forged in the crucible of adversity. As the Atlas prepared to chart a new course, a message arrived, a faint signal from a distant colony, a call for help. Without hesitation, Veil set the coordinates, the ship's engines igniting with purpose. The journey continued, driven by the enduring spirit of exploration and the unwavering belief in the resilience of humanity. In the vastness of space, amidst the stars and the silence, the Atlas carried forward the legacy of those who dared to dream, to fight, and to hope. Their story was not just one of survival but of the enduring power of connection, choice, and the indomitable human spirit. The silence after the battle felt deeper than space itself. No alarms, no voices. Just the quiet hum of systems stabilizing, breathing life back into the Atlas. Veil opened his eyes slowly inside the core chamber. He felt like he'd lived 3 lifetimes in a moment. Part of him still echoed with her, her thoughts, her voice, the weight of her memories. But she was fading now, easing back into the ship. Not gone, just gentler, quieter. He staggered to his feet. Around him, the vault systems powered down. The warmth that had once flooded the chamber cooled. The failsafe had done its job. She was still with them. He stepped back onto the bridge. The crew looked at him, eyes wide, waiting for his words. It's over, he said quietly. She's still here. A long silence followed. Some of them slumped in their seats, exhaustion washing over them. Others wiped quiet tears from their eyes. Even Ryan, the hardened weapons officer, looked away, blinking fast. Hara stood. We should check the long-range sensors. The swarm's collapse might have caused a signal shock across nearby systems. Veil nodded, slowly walking forward, resting a hand on the command rail. Do it. As they ran diagnostics and reoriented the ship, Veil watched the stars. They hadn't changed. Distant, cold, indifferent to what had just happened. And yet, to him, everything felt different. A soft voice broke into his thoughts. Do you regret it? It was her again. I don't know yet, he admitted. But I'd do it again. He expected her to say something, but she didn't. She didn't need to. There was understanding now, deeper than any explanation. They had shared everything. Even pain. Especially pain. The sensors chirped. Hara frowned, leaning closer to the screen. Captain, I've got something. Veil walked over. Another enemy? She shook her head. No. A distress signal. Weak. Buried under static. It's human. From the Halden system. He felt a tug in his chest. Isn't that where? Yeah, she said, confirming it. One of our early colonies. Thought it was abandoned after the last solar storm swept through. Veil exhaled, thinking. Plot a course. But the Atlas, we're not battle-ready. We barely survived this. I know, he said looking around. But we're not a weapon anymore either. We're a lifeline. We're what's left. The crew exchanged glances. No one objected. That's what made them different from the things they had just defeated. The swarm had numbers. But humans had purpose. Later, Vale stood alone in his quarters, staring at the datapad on his desk. A message blinked on the screen, half-saved. It was something he had started writing when he first came back on board. To her. He finished it now, quietly. I didn't come back to fight. I came back to say goodbye. But maybe this wasn't about endings at all. Maybe we had one last beginning left in us. Maybe the Atlas wasn't just your legacy. Maybe it's ours. He sent the message into the ship's log. Maybe she'd read it. Maybe she already had. The next day, as they approached Halden's outer rim, the crew saw it, ships. Civilian models, old, worn, barely functioning. A small fleet drifting in the dark. They were alive. Barely. Vale opened a channel. This is the Supercarrier Atlas. We heard your signal. You're not alone. Crackling static answered. Then a voice, hoarse and disbelieving. Atlas? We thought you were gone. We thought we were all that was left. You're not, Vale said, smiling faintly. We're here to bring you home. The survivors were stunned to see the Atlas. Not just because of its size or power, but because it still felt human. Even through the damage, the fire-scorched plating and the battle scars, it felt like hope. The refugees were brought aboard one by one. Some wept. Others asked questions. Many just stared in awe. A little girl clung to her mother's side and looked up at Vale as he walked past. Is this a ship? Vale crouched down and smiled. It's more than a ship. It's a promise. She tilted her head. Promise of what? That we don't leave people behind. The girl nodded, as if that answer made sense to her in a way nothing else ever had. The Atlas turned again, engines glowing as it began its new journey, back toward the core systems, carrying the last of Halden's people. And in the dark, the stars seemed just a little brighter. On the bridge, Hara looked up from her station. You think they're all gone? The rest of the swarm? No, Vale said. I think we stopped this wave. But there will be more. There's always more. Then we'll stop them too? He nodded. One at a time. Together. Later, in the quiet of the night cycle, the Atlas whispered again. Soft, gentle. A memory maybe. Or something real. I'm still watching. Vale closed his eyes and whispered back. I know. Because the Atlas wasn't just metal and systems anymore. It was her. It was them. It was every person who had stepped aboard and chosen to believe in something better. And as long as it drifted forward across the stars, that belief would live on. Because humanity's supercarrier was more than a machine. It was a story. And stories never really end.